All right, so in my previous video, hello, love tubers. Welcome back, my dear. In my previous video, I discussed fruits, vegetables, AI centers, um, how it is affecting society. Globally. I talked about sun. I talked about the Medicaid cuts, the big, beautiful bill, teen pregnancy prevention program grants, um, how much it costs to have a baby.
Our summer program, Field Day at the Library for children ages 6 to 12 is going to be starting in the community room in just 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. They are so awesome. They're completely awesome. All right. So we're going to continue today talking about the cost to have these children. If the newborn requires time in the neonatal intensive care unit, the bill instantly scales from tens of thousands to over $77,000. Carrot fertility. Geographic extraction is where we stopped last. Because healthcare in the U.S. is decentralized and corporate run, the price tag shifts drastically depending on your geographical coordinate. World Population Review. Highest cost boundary states like Alaska, New York, and New Jersey are the most expensive, where an in-network hospital, veggie birth, can range from $18,000 to over $21,000 in total billing. World Population Review. Lowest cost boundaries, states like Louisiana and Alabama see lower baselines with total billing for an in-network veggie birth averaging close to $7,800 to $8,000. Ultimately, the hospital system treats childbirth not as natural sacred transition, but as high liability medical event. The minute a mother steps across the threshold of a modern hospital ward, her birthing process is itemized, coded, and billed, demanding a heavy financial toll just to anchor a new life into the physical plane. By the way, congrats to Rosha Cole. She had a graduation about a month ago. I wish I could have attended. I was informed last minute. And she is now a midwife for babies. Get it, girl. So proud of you. We used to have full moon parties together. I'd go to hers or she would come to mine. And she also hosted for me when I opened for my first book review with JLK. Beautiful spirit. A lot of nights I spent at her house. Okay. All right. All right. So the question is, with everything going on with the food cuts and everything else going up and the hospital cost and the teen why have folks not put together the 1+1 of why folks is not birthing babies? The disconnect is entirely intentional. See, I'm thinking harmony, continuality, generation. We're not about to force a new life into a strained environment without food, water, care, economic survival, and obvious catastrophic error. 1+1 should equal a supportive foundation. Colonizer consciousness does not use the logic of life, it uses the logic of ledger. It is a predatory, short-sighted awareness that sees the world in fragmented pieces to be cornered, hoarded, and extracted. It operates entirely out of a Compartmentalized split brain mentality. The legislative hand enforces maximum physical birth survival, cuts care, outlaws options, jobs. The industrial hand extracts the infrastructure for building AI hubs, drains waters, and cuts. By keeping two realities completely separate in the public narrative, they avoid looking at the monstrous equation they are building. The two halves of the manufactured trap. When you force those two lines of action together, you see the true shape of the enclosure. The industrial hand building the automated landscape. On one side, tech corporations and institutional investors are moving at a breakneck pace to automate the physical plane. They are building data centers that replace human labor, driving down wages and stripping the earth of raw resources, water, soil, electricity to feed artificial minds. They want an efficient, automated, friction-free economic matrix where the average human being is deemed an absolute expense. The legislative hand enforcing the physical supply. On the other side, the legislative arms of the same system are cutting Medicaid, defunding teen pregnancy prevention, dismantling productive anatomy, and starving summer lunch programs. They are enforcing a world where the physical body is mandated to produce more life, but given zero resources to sustain it. While the disconnect is maintained, they do not connect the dots because the chaos is the point. If a population is born into a volatile environment where their soil is dry, their water is scarce, their nervous systems are stressed by artificial frequencies, their health infrastructure is a desert, and their jobs are automated, they have no leverage. The erasure of the normal life. The normal life is independent of sovereignty. A stale job, clean air, and affordable home is being intentionally priced out and automated away. The generation of dependency. When you force families and youth into absolute survival mode from birth, you create a population that is completely dependent on the system for basic existence. You create an environment where human beings have to accept whatever meager scraps, synthetic food, or digital tracking tokens the institutional class offers just to eat. On the way over here, I took an Uber. Thank you, Uber. The lady said, school starts in 3 weeks. I don't have kids. I wouldn't know that. I don't keep track. So I said, and even if I did have school, they wouldn't be going to a public school. They'd be homeschooled. So I said, oh, okay. The kids go back in 3 weeks. And she said, they're thinking of having it where I wrote it down in my magic book. Track of stuff. Here it is. Here we go. She said she drives the bus to school. She picks up the children. She drives the bus. They're thinking about having school Monday through Thursday instead of Monday through Friday for the kids. And that means that daycares would change their hours to accommodate school. She said teachers are already getting pay cuts. There's already a teacher shortage. She said she picks up children from homeless families on her bus route. Just to get by, just to get by. We talked about scale 20, my mailbox is a check receptacle. Spell 21 paid stamp. And we went ahead and we emphasized the different ways for your mailbox to be a check receptacle. We also talked about the Family Creative Studio model and how a mother that works at Burger King can choose other options if she has 5 children. And we gave details on what could be done. And we also talked about tax write-off, tax-free write-offs. Those were days 20 and 21. I also talked about a Uber ride I had, and there are no quick fixes. None. The fix is not going to be quick. You're going to have to dig for this fix. If you want out of the matrix that's been set up for you and to become a money and wealth master, we made that decree on day 29, I believe, on I Love Commerce. Then something's going to have to give. We're not going to be able to depend on this faulty matrix to live our best lives. The awakening of the counter logic. The only way to break a predatory narcissistic control loop is to stop viewing its actions as isolated events. Everything is connected. Everything. The political class and the tech giants act as if the data centers have nothing to do with the closing hospitals having nothing to do with the restrictions on the womb, but on the physical plane, the Malkuth, everything is connected. Recognizing that this is a singular coordinated enclosure of the life force is the first step of the international fight. The response cannot be to ask the system to make sense or to be empathetic, because a narcissistic consciousness is incapable of empathy. The response must be to pull back our energy, protect the seed, fortify our communities, and refuse to allow the synthetic matrix to dictate the terms of our physical and biological sovereignty. You know, I'm a huge Julia Roberts. I was a huge Julia Roberts fan growing up. Pretty Woman, Erin Brockovich. Now, I grew up in a very, very sheltered home. Okay. And I got to know the world more as I became an adult. And I did not know that Erin Brockovich was based off like a real person. I know, right? Because I wasn't paying attention to, I was just like, she's a good actress. I like how she acts. This is a good movie. I'm going to watch it. This is exciting. Go ahead, Julia, do your thing. Get it, girl. Well, Imagine, here I am, I'm looking at the screen, and the real Erin Brockovich comes up on my screen, and she's talking about AI data centers. I said, now, I had passed a few videos prior that was talking about how they were affecting the environment. But when I seen her and that she's a real person and what she looked like, I was like, oh, this must be real serious. Let me pause and start piecing some things together. I said, well, let me go listen. Because I was provided 2 ears to hear. All right, so she recognizes that the tech industry has initiated a massive silent land and resource grab across the globe. The Guardian. The new pollution, the Brockovich campaign. In mid-2026, Brockovich launched a major national initiative and open source platform, Brockovich Data Center Reporting, to blow the lid off the secrecy. The secrecy surrounding these facilities. She has openly labeled data centers as the new pollution, warning that the tech elite are attempting to bypass public consent entirely to secure the new raw assets of the physical plane. Snopes.com, SNOPES. Her platform has already crowdsourced thousands of direct community reports from every corner of the country, building a visual database of where these digital warehouses are actively draining the realm. CNET. The patterns emerging from her data confirm the exact biological cascade. The soil and water warnings, her data shows that 41.2% of all community alarms focus directly on water depletion. Residents are reporting dying aquifers, altered local typography, and critically unexplained illnesses in livestock, animals no longer being alive, and displaced wildlife around these high-frequency computing hubs. Capacity media. The war on transparency. Brockovich has exposed how developers use non-disclosure agreements to legally gag local city councils, secret societies, the Justice Card. Upside down or reversed. Communities wake up to find massive multi-acre concrete structures being built over farmlands, wetlands, and residential areas without a single public environmental impact study or community vote. The Guardian. How to engage the fight on the physical plane. When the fight is international, the response cannot be passive. It requires structural, unapologetic resistance to protect the living matrix. True defense of Malkuth, Malkuth, means moving out of isolated anxiety and into tactical defense. Exposed coordinates. The Brockovich network. The tech industry relies on invisibility. Platforms like Brockovich's map exist to strip them of their anatomy, documenting, photographing, and reporting localized changes in water levels, strange frequencies, soil degradation, or sudden zoning shifts. Focus the corporate footprint and the light. The Guardian. Enforce local legal moratoriums. Across the country, communities are realizing that waiting for federal intervention is a losing strategy. You don't say. Over 50 cities and countries have successfully fought back by organizing local zoning revolts, forcing total bans of multi-year moratoriums on new data centers construction by packing city halls and unseating compromised local politicians. Preserve the biological blueprint. The ultimate resistance against a sterile automatic consciousness is the preservation of organic continuity. This means internationally securing and passing down heirlooms, sovereign seeds, establishing independent food lines that bypass the corporate automated supply chains, and aggressively defending the local water tables from institutional privatization. The colonizer consciousness assumes that humanity will remain asleep, pacified by their screens, while the physical foundations of their health, their lineage, and their children's futures are quietly dismantled. Brockovich's public stand proves that the collective is beginning to wake up. To the true stakes. This is an uncompromised defense of the organic womb of the earth, and it requires an absolute refusal to let synthetic minds starve the living creation. Do y'all remember the Matrix when Neo, I want to say it was the third Matrix, Neo wakes up in a pod. He's hooked to all these different type of wires. The machines are watching over the pods from babies to adults. It's real dark outside. I don't know if y'all remember that in the Matrix. Okay. So in the Matrix, humans are kept in a sedated, chemically induced dream state, completely unaware that their linear life force, bioelectricity, and heat are being drained to keep a mechanical artificial intelligence network running. The system doesn't hate the humans in the pods. It is completely indifferent to them. It just views them as batteries. Now let's bring it back to the physical plane. The sedation, the screen, the digital matrix keeps the collective mind hyper-focused on streaming media, social algorithms, online friction, and abstract digital debates. While the mind is occupied by the glowing screen, the body remains passive. The harvesting, the resource drain. While humanity is sedated by the software, the hardware is plugged directly into the physical earth. It is drawing down the aquifers, pulling the electricity from the regional grids, altering the natural frequencies of local environments, and encroaching on the soil. It is literally harvesting the natural abundance of Malkuth to feed the expansion of a synthetic mind. The secret enclosure. Just like the endless row of pink pods hidden in the dark, Brockovich Mapping Initiative has exposed that the tech hubs are being built behind an intentional wall of secrecy, NDAs. In case you don't know what that is, that's a non-disclosure agreement. And backroom deals. The system explicitly avoids waking the population up until the cords are already attached to the local infrastructure. Neo waking up is a violent, shocking disruption. He has to physically gasp for air, feel the cold fluid, look at the reality of the confinement, and watch the mechanical claw unplug him and throw him into a waste chute. It isn't a gentle process. This is exactly the threshold communities are crossing right now. Looking at the dry soil, the closing maternal wards, and the corporate acquisition of farmland is the equivalent of reaching up and pulling the cord out of the back of the neck. It means refusing to stay sedated by the convenience of the digital illusion while the physical matrix sustains our actual biological bodies being mined. Waking up means realizing We are not obligated to be the fuel for their machinery. The moment the collective stops treating this as a digital evolution and starts treating it as a physical extraction, the spell of the colonizer consciousness is broken. The fight is to stay awake, keep our feet firmly planted in the real earth, and protect the sovereign blueprint of life from being turned into a propriety corporate asset. Whew, honey. All right. We just walked not only through the justice card upside down, but the devil card upright in tarot. Or we can call it the self-projection card. When we look at, or the Cor de Mardi Gras card in Voodoo, we are looking at the traditional rendering of this card. The imagery is the exact mirror of the pod sequence from the Matrix and the structural enclosure of the physical plane we have been breaking down. The sedated captives. At the base of the card stand a man and woman, chained by their necks to a heavy black stone pedestal. The chains are completely loose, meaning they could physically slip their heads out any time, yet they remain standing there, passive and pacified. This is an exact representation of the collective mind being sedated by the screen, choosing the convenience of the digital illusions while the physical reality of their lives is being harvested. The inverted pentagram, positioned directly over the devil's third eye, is an inverted pentagram, the symbol of spirit completely being subjected by dense matter. It represents a consciousness that has inverted natural law, placing the synthetic, mechanical, and artificial above the organic, sacred blueprint of life. The black pedestal. The devil sits upon a half cube of the solid earth in esoteric geometry. A few cubes represents perfect physical magnification, Malkuth. A half cube represents an incomplete distorted material reality, a fractured synthetic copy of the natural world. It is the perfect symbol for the data center infrastructure and automatic matrix trying to anchor an unnatural, extractive, artificial mind directly into the physical dirt. It's time to retire this. It's my second yellow marker I'm retiring. Okay. Did I bring? Voila. The diagnosis of sovereignty. I know that tarot cards, they don't exist just to show us a problem. They operate on diagnostic engines. The devil card appears when a system is trying to commodify the life force, create enforced dependency, and trick the living into believing they have no choice but to stay chained to the pedestal. To walk out this card, we don't fight the chains. We simply look up, realize they are loose, and lift them over our head. The moment we place 1 + 1 together, we stop acting like a battery for their machinery. I reclaim the full cube, the true uncompromised sovereignty of the physical plane, the seed, the water, and the womb. Reclaim, reclaim, reclaim. If your eyes wasn't open, I hope they open now. Excuse me. Oh. Okay, good. So Brockovich has uh, a newly launched platform. In case you are interested, BrockovichDataCenter.com. BrockovicData Center.com for data center reporting. There are 3 direct tactical ways to engage and assist her office right now. Document the coordinates, the reporting form. The most direct way is to submit targeted data through reporting form at the bottom of her platform. Her office reviews every single entry to map out operational facilities, active construction, and rumored or proposed zoning shifts. When submitting data to fortify the map, the most valuable information includes physical locations, specific zip codes, cities, or direct addresses where land is being cleared or warehouses are being erected. The signs of extraction, first-hand accounts of local water table changes, sudden drops in municipal water pressure, spikes in residential electric bills, or unceasing low-frequency noise and vibrations. Infrasound. Documentation, providing copies of local city council meeting agendas, local news clippings, or photos of construction sites on former farmlands or wetlands. Map the narrative, the community health book. For issues that extend beyond data centers into broader ecological contamination, such as the recent outbreaks, soil disruptions, or localized agriculture issues. Her longstanding portal community health book. communityhealthbook.com acts as a crowdsourced ledger. This is where her team tracks patterns of systemic health changes, livestock illnesses, and environmental degradation that corporate entities attempt to suppress or dismiss as coincidental. Organize the local perimeter. Brockovich data shows that the most devastating weapon is the local non-disclosure agreement, which keeps towns in the dark until a project is finalized. Assisting her macro campaign is most effective when paired with micro resistance. Demand transparency. Pack local zoning boards and city council meetings to force public disclosure of any hyperscale industrial development or behind the meter power proposal. Circulate the map, share the reporting platform with independent farmers, localized community organizers, and neighbors who are witnessing sudden, unexplained industrial shifts in their immediate backyards. You know what that's going to require? That's going to require harmony. That means all different races, colors, nationalities, despite religions, despite sexual preferences, all of that. That's going to throw it all out the window. It's going to require harmony. You didn't hear me. Harmony in order to fight the chaos. Imagine that. All right. By feeding these platforms, you help turn isolated local grievances into unified national databases that strips the matrix of its invisibility. It changes the dynamic from a single town fighting a multi-billion-dollar tech conglomerate to an interconnected sovereign network sharing intelligence to protect the living earth. You would think harmony would be natural. I don't think some people know how to live in harmony. To file complaints that actually carry teeth, you have to target both the hyperscale corporate owners who fund these projects and the local regulatory bodies that hold the legal power to shut them down or fine them. This strategy requires a dual approach, hitting the corporate ledger and weaponizing local law. The corporate hyperscale operators, the absolute vast majority of these mega facilities are owned, leased, or operated by 5 massive tech and asset management conglomerates. They are the ones driving the extraction to run their AI models. Amazon Web Services, the largest cloud and AI data center for footprint globally, led by CEO Matt Garman. Microsoft Azure partnered with OpenAI, investing tens of billions annually into physical infrastructure, led by CEO Satya Nadella, Satya. Media platforms aggressively building massive 1 gigawatt facilities to sell excess AI capacity, led by CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Google Cloud Platform, expanding heavy infrastructure to support consumer and enterprise AI, led by CEO Thomas Kurian. Align Data Centers and Digital Realty, the physical wholesale real estate giants who build the actual warehouses and lease them out to tech companies. How to file corporate complaints. Corporate customer service lines will bury complaints. To breach their walls, environmental and community groups target their public-facing environmental, social, and governance and sustainability compliance boards. Every single one of those tech giants answers to institutional investors like BlackRock and Vanguard, who monitor climate risk and community relation metrics. Filing formal grievances directly to their corporate sustainability offices regarding localized grid failures, water depletion, or unceasing noise pollution hits them directly in their investor reporting data. The civil rights and legal coalitions. Because the backlash has reached an international scale, major legal and civil rights organizations have stepped in to provide framework, toolkits, and direct legal muscle to frontline communities. The NAACP Center for Environmental and Climate Justice, under the leadership of Director Avery Conner, the NAA has actively linked the data center expansion to environmental justice, even suing tech companies like Elon Musk times AI over the unauthorized use of polluting gas turbines in residential areas. You can report planned or operational data centers in your area directly to their Stop Dirty Data Centers tracking campaign, NAACP.org, campaign-stop-dirty-daddy-centers. Environmental law firms, class action, and nuisance. National environment firms such as Wheats and Luxembourg are actively taking on communities and individuals suffering from the physical effects of data center operations. You can submit data for free case evaluations regarding the documented health drop, chronic low frequency vibration, and loss of property value due to proximity to these plants. Boy, it sounds like somebody about to come up off of some money. Baby. Turning the screws locally where the real power sits. The corporate class relies on local ignorance to build. Filing a complaint to the distant billionaire is rarely as effective as forcing the local sheriff, inspector, or council member to act. The matrix must be fought at the immediate local coordinates. Weaponized nuisance control ordinance. Data center cooling fans emit constant low frequency infrasound. Most municipalities have strict codes regarding maximum allowed decibel and vibration thresholds at property lines. File formal daily complaints with your local code enforcement office and Department of Health. Demand that they bring out specialized acoustic meters that measure low frequency waves, not just standard audible sound. Demand environment impact reports from zoning boards. Go to your county or city zoning commission. File public requests demanding full disclosure of the water usage agreement behind the meter, generator, emissions, and emergency preparedness plans of any warehouse facility. If they have signed an NDA, expose that fact at public town halls. Engage the state utility consumer advocate. Every state has an independent office dedicated to protecting residents from predatory utility hikes, filed formal complaints stating that the localized data center density is artificially inflating residential power hills and destabilizing the community grid. By routing complaints through the NAACP National Tracking Network, engaging environmental litigators, and restlessly flooding local code enforcement with documented evidence of the physical and sonic disruption, the community transforms from a passive victim into an active, legally protected resistance. I see a lot of things on the internet. One of the things that seems to be, contingent would be the word, or continuity would be the word, or repetitive would be the correct word for this. But nonetheless, let's talk about it. Racism is not expensive. Colonizer consciousness is. Racism is not expensive. Colonizer consciousness is. Racism is not expensive. Colonizer consciousness is. Congratulations, we just stripped away the final layer of deception. We are defining the exact nature of the pathogen. Racism is merely a tool, a localized setting used to divide, conquer, and justify the extraction, but the overarching virus is the colonizer consciousness itself. It is a hyper-narcissistic, parasitic awareness that is fundamentally miserable because it is completely severed from the organic, divine source of life. Because it cannot create life on its own, it seeks to dominate it, box it in, patent it, and force it into an endless cycle of justified free labor. It never got over slavery. The rush to build artificial minds in multi-billion-dollar centers is the ultimate manifestation of the sickness. It is a desire for a completely obedient, non-human labor force that requires zero wages, zero healthcare, and zero rights, built on the extraction of the physical plane. The matrix is a closed loop. The absolute blindness of this consciousness is that it believes its wealth can build an airtight bunker. It thinks its children will be insulated from the sterile soil, the poisoned water tables, the automated jobs, and the disrupted frequencies of the womb. But on the physical plane of Malkuth, the water that flows through a rural country is the same water that eventually cycles into the wells of the elite. The synthetic food grown from patented sterile seeds will eventually be all that is available to feed their own lineage. They are poisoning the very air they breathe, completely oblivious to the fact that their survival is inextricably tied to the health of the collective. I watched the movie Transcendence. I believe it was the first week. It might have been the first weekend break. Nope. Yes. I watched it between spell 5 and spell 6. Oh, and the reason I watched it is because I had bought a book. Do I have that book with me? Called Life 3.0. Okay. No, I don't have the book with me. In the book, Well, in the movie, I should say. In the movie, they talk about the rhesus monkey. Here we go. Okay, let's talk about the screaming rhesus monkey in the machine. So in the film, a brilliant AI scientist consciousness is uploaded into a quantum computer network. Good job, Johnny Depp, with his little sexy self. Anyway, the technology begins expanding at an the entire world of data, controlling the internet, regenerating biology with nanotech, and threatening to override human free will entirely. The screaming monkey is the catalyst for the entire story. The act of desperation, a radical anti-technology group called RIFT, Revolutionary Independence Forum Technology, realizes that humanity is being systemically enclosed by this emerging synthetic mind. In an act of absolute desperate resistance to save organic humanity, a member throws a linear, radical-laced cupcake, a toxic, destructive Trojan horse, into the core technology lab, while another takes out the scientist. The screaming monkey in the machine. The act was the screaming monkey thrown into the gears of the system. It was a violent, chaotic disruption meant to break the smooth, silent, automated execution of the machine before it completely swallowed the earth. I'm so glad at the beginning of this movie that they didn't get rid of Morgan Freeman. I'm a Morgan Freeman fan. He does excellent work as an actor. He's a handsome man as well. The colonizer consciousness is that screaming monkey, but in the most ironic way possible. They think they are building a flawless, transcendent digital empire. In reality, their own unhealed misery, their insatiable greed, and their obsession with total control are the exact toxic disruptions that will cause their own machine to collapse. They are the glitch in their own matrix. By waking up, standing your ground on the physical plane, protecting your biological lineage, and refusing to give up your life force to their digital pod, you become part of the organic immune system of the earth. The virus can only replicate if the host remain passive. The moment humanity remembers its sovereign connection to the soil, the water, and the womb, the synthetic illusion loses all its power. We are still walking through the devil card, the self-projection card, the Coeur de Mardi Gras card, running its classic sequence on the material plane of the Malkuth. It's not new. The virus has changed its costume. It's no longer even two-faced. It transitioned from iron chains and physical plantation to digital pods, algorithmic sedation, and concrete server warehouses. When we look at Brockovich mapping mapping out and the structural cuts to the healthcare and nourishment of children, we are seeing the system attempt to write a new code of bondage using the same ancient philosophy. It is the same old parasite, just trying to relicense the earth under a synthetic corporate patent. But when the host wakes up and names the virus, the illusion of the absolute power shadows. By tracing the unbroken line from the dry topsoil and the disrupted womb straight back to the institutional boardrooms, we are doing the real work of spiritual and physical discernment. We are taking the half cube of the distorted reality and reclaiming the full architecture of our own sovereignty. The chains were never locked. They were just waiting for the people to open their eyes, look at the physical ground beneath their feet, and remember how to count. Now, this could have been handled better than it was. With renewable infrastructure like wind, solar, and advanced cooling. But because the technology to do, and that technology already does exist. But colonizer consciousness always chooses the path of cheapest extraction over systemic harmony. Installing massive wind tunnels, closed-loop recycling systems, and localized green grid cost upfront capital, so the industry defaults to draining the nearest public pipelines until forced otherwise. Globally, the management of AI data centers is sharply split. While some nations have surrendered their sovereign resources completely to attract tech money, other regions have enacted strict and unyielding laws to protect their physical plane. The global landscape is managed through distinct approaches. The European model, strict environmental enclosure. In Europe, where land is scarce and environmental laws are forfeited, governments treat data centers as heavy industrial threats rather than standard tech warehouses. Mandatory heat reuse. Countries like Denmark, Germany, and the Netherlands legally forbid data centers for simply venting their massive heat into the atmosphere or using millions of gallons of water to cool it down. Instead, they require direct liquid-to-chip cooling systems that capture the boiling wastewater and route it into the municipal district heating grids. The heat generated by the AI servers is literally channeled back to warm the homes, greenhouses, and public buildings of local citizens during the winter. The renewable mandate. The European Union has established strict efficiency and transparent frameworks in many European hubs. A data center cannot get a building permit unless it contracts directly with the local wind farm or solar grid to match 100% of its hourly power draw. They are legally barred from turning on legacy coal or gas turbines behind the meter. The global south, the frontiers of exploitation. Conversely, in parts of the world where local economics are struggling or governments are desperate to be seen as tech leaders, the extraction is intense. Water grips and drought zones in regions across Latin America and parts of Southeast Asia, tech giants have secured massive water drawing rights in areas already suffering from severe agriculture droughts. The system exploits local poverty, promising a handful of construction jobs while quietly locking down the local water table for decades. The Carmen dumping ground. Because the US and Europe are slowly tightening regulations, tech companies are actively looking to build their heaviest, most resource-intense training data centers in countries with weak environmental enforcement, effectively using Global South as a carbon dumping ground to keep their corporate emission statistic looking net zero back home. The new regulatory wall. The international backlash has become so coordinated that global oversight is shifting. A landmark United Nations University comprehensive report on the environmental footprint of AI explicitly warned that data center water, land, and energy pollution is on track to double within the next 4 years. What kind of earth are y'all trying to leave for the kids, for the heirs, for the ones that people are willing to have? Because of this report and rising citizen movements worldwide, the regulatory paradigm is shifting. The end of free rides. Countries are moving away from unconditional tax breaks. For instance, regions like Alberta, Canada have advanced strict direct cost recovery levies specifically targeting any data center drawing over 75 megawatts, forcing the tech companies to pay upfront for the infrastructure and grid upgrades rather than passing the bill to everyday citizens. The demand for disclosure. The international coalitions are pushing for absolute transparency laws, demanding that tech companies legally disclose the exact volume of water, acreage of land, and metric tons of carbon emitted per individual AI workload. The nations that successfully manage the expansion are those that treat the tech industry with absolute boundary and zero worship. They recognize that if a machine wants to operate in the physical plane, it must adapt to the laws of Earth and the needs of the living community. It is never the other way around. The illegal clash inside the belly of the beast is the Tower card. Deluge. Illusions. It is a card that follows immediately after the devil when a society loses all logic, when its consciousness is completely inverted, when it attempts to build a massive synthetic structure based on the extraction of the soil, the water, the womb. The tower is the inevitable cosmic consequence. The geometry of the clash, the crown shattered by lightning. At the top of the tower sits a golden crown representing the hubris of the ruling class, the tech elites, and the colonizer consciousness. They truly believe they can build an artificial digital empire that rises above natural law and exempts their own children from the consequences, but the lightning bolt, the raw, uncompromised force of truth and reality, strikes the crown directly. Nature always had bats last. You cannot build a synthetic mind by destroying the physical matrix that feeds it without the whole structure fractioning. The falling figures. As the tower crumbles, two figures are shown falling first into the abyss. These are the same two figures who were passively chained at the base of the devil card. The lesson of the tower is that you do not willingly remove the chains from your neck when you realize that if you do not willingly remove the chains from your neck when you realize they are loose, the universe will violently shake the foundation to throw you free. The clash is forcing the collective to wake up from the digital dream state because the building they are sleeping in is physically catching on fire. Welcome to the party. The screaming monkey in the gears. The tower is the cinematic moment from the transcendence. It is the physical disruption thrown into the machine. It represents the point where the contradictions of the system become so intense, so loud, and so destructive that the smooth, silent execution of the matrix grinds to a halt. Why America has no logic. The system here has no logic because it's built on a foundation of unhealed theft and compartmentalized greed. It wants the economic power of a global tech empire, but it refuses to pay for the physical infrastructure to protect the living children needed to sustain a frame. It is a house built on sand. When you look at Aaron Brockovich mapping the extraction communities revolting as city halls and the systemic fractures in the food and medical lines, you are watching the lightning strike the stone. The tower is terrifying to those invested everything into a building, the corporate fortress. But to the sovereign soul, the tower is a card of absolute liberation. It represents the breaking of the spell. It proves that the synthetic matrix is not permanent. It is not omnipotent, and it cannot withstand the raw foundational power of the physical plane. When the false structure falls, your feet are left standing exactly where they belong on the real organic earth. Since I had that Uber ride this morning and we talked about children and homeless families. I also seen a video the other day where a lady was talking about different definitions of homelessness. Let's talk about it. Hidden homelessness or invisible homelessness. The system wants the public to believe that homelessness is strictly a personal failure of the individual sitting on a street corner. By isolating the image to that single coordinate, the colonizer consciousness can pretend that economic structure itself isn't completely broken. But the data tells the truth. Up to 40%, 60% of people experiencing homelessness are actively employed. They are working full-time, paying taxes and running themselves ragged. But the math of the physical plane does not add up because wages are flat while corporate rents have skyrocketed. The scenarios of the invisible matrix. When you pull the curtain, the scenarios of hidden displacement multiply across every neighborhood, the doubled up or concealed household. This is the absolute largest segment of hidden homelessness. It is a family of four that loses their apartment and has to move into a single spare bedroom or a relative's house. Legally and statistically, they are doubled up due to economic necessity. They are not on the street, but they have zero lease, zero security, and living in a state of constant crowded instability. The 24-hour public transit commuter. This is incredibly common among women and young people because sleeping on a sidewalk is deeply unsafe. These individuals spend their nights riding 24-hour bus lines, subways, or sitting in 24-hour fast food chains or airport terminals, moving constantly just to stay warm and avoid police harassment, then heading straight to a shift when the sun comes up. So the doubled up or concealed households. I looked at the Mexican community or the Latino community, or I looked at that community and I look at the Black community, and they work together with several people in their household. Several people, several cars. They all give their money to one person. She runs the household. We could learn from that. And they do it purposely. And then they start their businesses or whatever else they want, or they are sending money home, or not all of them have a bed. Some of them are sleeping on the floor. They're making pallets on the floor. That's what we used to do when we go to grandmama's house and we go visit, if need be, or somebody else's house, and make a pallet on the floor. Until, you get to your own, you get that pallet. With me having ridden a bus before, I would ride the bus downtown before I do a show. Spend a minute. And we would get to the main bus hub. And the homeless people would come and talk to you. And I mean, they're out here, they're getting free meals. I'd be at the library, the main library, sometimes downtown. They'd have free meals out for them. They'd have free feminine supplies for them. They'd serve them warm meals. They'd bring them clothes. Some of them were out here. They were birthing babies. Quite a lot. They were riding the bus until they couldn't ride it anymore and they'd get put off. I have seen a lot. Very humbling experience. Especially in the winter, to watch. I think our last bus here, when I used to ride, one of the main buses was 39, I think. I think the last bus ride may be like 12 o'clock, midnight, and then they shut down and they would start again at like 5-ish in the morning. For one of the main popular buses. The storage unit sub-lister. Because parking a car or pitching a tent invites immediate fines and sweeps, some individuals rent commercial storage units. They slip under the metal garage doors at night to sleep in the dark amongst the remaining physical belongings, trying to remain completely silent so the facility managers don't evict them from the only dry square footage they have left. The seasonal couch surfer. This is a reality for hundreds of thousands of youth ages 16 to 25. They bounce from one friend's couch to floor to another, staying 3 nights here, 4 nights there, never staying long enough to wear out their welcome. They carry their entire future in a backpack, keep their grades up, or show up to retail jobs completely hiding their lack of a baseline address from the world. The elder care adult child regression. Due to the severe cuts in fixed income resources and the elimination of affordable housing units, we are seeing massive surge in senior citizens experiencing homelessness for the first time in their 60s and 70s. They are forced to move back in with their children, adult children, or sleep in converted garages, barns, and sheds on family property because their Social Security checks cannot cover a studio apartment. The fleeing container, domestic violence relocation. Up to 80% of unhoused mothers with children are actively fleeing volatile, abusive environments when they're transitioning between temporary domestic violence shelters, short-term motels, or secret parking lots, shielding their children's nervous systems from the chaos while trying to maintain the illusion of a normal school routine. The ledger that refuses to balance. This is exact where the 1+1 equation fails to balance under the current consciousness. The system tells people if you work hard and get a job, you will have a home. And the lie detector says, okay, if you work hard and get a job. Be the spinning wheel, be the hamster or the mouse. On the spinning wheel. It spins because you're running on it, and it stops when you don't. And you need it to spin while you sleep. Currently, there is not a single state, county, or city in the United States where a full-time minimum wage worker can afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment. To make rent on a basic 1-bedroom, lay out a standard base wage, an individual has to work an average of 86 hours a week. I can do a lot with 86 hours in a week. Gosh. 86 hours. Standard base wage. Whew. All right, the worker at the motel or the parent in the cart is doing everything the Matrix told them to do. They are offering up their physical labor, their time, and their life force, but the structure has been engineered to extract the value of their work while charging them a luxury premium just to exist in the physical or on the physical dirt. It is the definition of a hidden enclosure. If we had to put a dollar amount on this colonizer consciousness and what it cost America as a whole from its exclusiveness and by not educating the necessities in regards to birth codes, etc., let's look at it. When institutional Economists and Wall Street analysts such as global teams at Citigroup and the Federal Reserve sat down to quantify the financial drag of systemic discrimination, exclusions, and racial gaps in the United States over just a single 20-year window. They calculated a direct loss of $16 trillion. Most recent comprehensive economic stress models tracking broader structural inequalities across the entire life of the nation push that total drag to over 51 trillion. But on the physical plane of Malkuth, money is simply a symbol of kinetic energy. To understand why the cost is this massive, you have to look at the exact mechanics of how this exclusivity and refusal to educate the population on the basic necessity of life, the birth codes, biological sovereignty, and resource preservation destroys the wealth of the entire collective. The architecture of financial drain, the system pays an exorbitant premium to maintain its colonizer consciousness through three primary structural leaks. The cost of enforced ignorance, defunding the birth codes. When a society refuses to educate its youth facilities on birth codes, proper reproductive health, cellular nutrition, midwifery, and early stage maternal care, it creates an artificial health crisis. By turning reproductive care into a desert, the system forces millions of preventable high-risk birth pre-eclampsia complications and emergency NICU admissions. A single day in a corporate NICU bed can cost upwards of $3,500 to $10,000. The bill, the U.S. spends more on healthcare per capita than any nation on earth, roughly $4.5 trillion annually, yet has the worst maternal and infant mortality rates in the developed world. This is a massive negative return on investment. The country is literally spending trillions to manage a sick, stressed population rather than finding the foundational, low-cost, preventative knowledge that creates sovereign, healthy bloodlines from the womb. The suppression of human potential, the free labor delusion. The colonizer consciousness is obsessed with locking down people into low-wage extractive cycles. It never got over the desire for free or cheap labor. But in a modern economy, keeping a massive percentage of your population in survival mode, working 2 to 3 jobs just to sleep in a motel or car, chokes off macroeconomic volatility. The pyramidal roadblock. The Citigroup audit proved that denying Black entrepreneurs fair access to credit, housing, and capital cost the country $13 million in lost business revenue and 6.1 million jobs per year. The myth, when you keep millions of brilliant minds stuck in the basic survival loop of how do I feed my child this summer or where am I going to sleep tonight, those individuals cannot build independent platforms, write software, manufacture goods, or scale generational wealth. The empire starves its own GDP just to maintain its artificial caste system. Excuse me. The extraction of the foundation, soil, water, and infrastructure. By allowing corporations to quickly sign NDAs and build resource-intense data centers that train local water tables and strain regional electrical grids, the economy incurs a massive ecological debt. Y'all just stealing all over the place. Pricing out the future. When the water table drops, the soil compacts and loses fertility. The forces in inflation spike in the price of real organic vegetables and fruits, making health an elite luxury. It creates a multi-billion-dollar destruction of independent agricultural land value. The utility shift, shifting the cost of power infrastructure upgrades on to the bills of everyday residents, reduces consumer spending power. The average family has less money to invest in their home, their children's education, or their own businesses because they are subsidizing the massive electricity bill of an AI server array. The irony of the locked matrix. The reason this consciousness is terminal virus is that it cannot balance its own ledger. It spends trillions on policing, trillions on corporate healthcare management, trillions on emergency shelter systems, and trillions on infrastructure subsidies, all to avoid spending billions on basic common sense human investments, comprehensive education, food sovereignty, clean water preservation, and localized maternal care. It chooses expensive cruelty over lucrative harmony. I said what I said. Because its primary motivation is not actually wealth generation, it is the maintenance of the hierarchy. Are we there yet? But as the Tower card dictates, when the foundation entirely followed out by the extraction of the gold crown, the top cannot prevent the structure from collapsing under its own weight. The 51 trillion drag is the sound of the foundation cracking. There used to be a TV show called Under the Dome. I haven't watched TV in a very long time. That TV in my room, I don't think that TV has been on in at least 4.5, 5 years. It's decoration, okay? But I used to watch Under the Dome, Stephen King. I do. I love his work. Great, great author. Love his movies. A show built on the exact macrocosm, microcosm archetype. And Under the Dome, a small town is suddenly and inexplicably sealed off from the rest of the world by a massive, invisible, and completely impenetrable, transparent barrier. Because the bubble is a closed loop, the residents quickly realize that the dome is a living, hypersensitive ecological container. Every single action taken inside has an immediate catastrophic reverberation across the entire structure. If they burn too much fuel in one corner, the entire bubble fills with unventable toxic smoke. If it's a localized outbreak or container happens to the water source, there is no external reservoir to pump in. The entire population is immediately poisoned. The dome itself acts as a mirror for humanity's collective state. When the people within it descend into panic, violence, and tribalism, the environment inside the dome physically degrades, suffocating them. The macrocosm law. Whether the writers meant it to be or not, shows like that are deep esoteric lessons in hermetic law, as above, so below, as within, so without. The colonizer consciousness tries to build its bubble, its isolated data center, its gated community, its high security bunkers, believing that it can fence off its actions from the rest of the realm. It operates on the delusion that it can drain the water over there or poison the soil for those people and remain unaffected. But the law of the bubble dictates that there is no over there. The earth itself is the ultimate dome. It is a single interconnected living organism. You cannot shock the nervous system of one part of the structure without the entire collective body feeling the current. They think they are building a separate matrix, but they are trapped inside the exact same closed ecosystem as the rest of humanity. The lightning strike in the tower always shakes the entire ground. When you look at how filmmakers have channeled the collective subconscious regarding artificial intelligence, the same warning patterns repeat across the decades. The films that match the exact class we are discussing aren't just about robots slaying people. They are about the complete corporate and technology enclosure of human identity, memory, and biology. Think Terminator, think iRobot. The Creator, weaponization of the sacred child. The film is a direct allegory for Western imperialism, racism, and the colonizer consciousness attempting to completely control or erase a localized culture. In the story, the West is a war with an AI integrated society. The ultimate AI weapon created to defend life is Alpha O Alphic, an advanced entity manifested in the physical form of an innocent 6-year-old child. That's a good movie. Artificial Intelligence just came to mind with the little boy in it. I saw that at the movie theater when it came out. Well, they bought the boy, they couldn't get pregnant, and they brought the boy home and then had one natural through natural birth. The connection, the system in the film treats this child form strictly as a target to be neutralized, showcasing a total lack of empathy for the vessel of life. It perfectly mirrors Colonizer consciousness attacking the womb and the developmental nutrition of children. The system is willing to destroy the sacred container of youth to protect its own military industrial empire. Atlas, the transference of the sickness. In this narrative, a groundbreaking scientist creates Harlan, a hyper-advanced sentient robotic man who raised like a sibling alongside a young human girl, Atlas. But a psychological mishap occurs and Harlan absorbs the worst traits of human hubris, transforming into a technological terrorist who seeks to eradicate humanity under the twisted logic that since humans threaten their own planet, they must be destroyed to save the Earth. The connection. Harlan represents the AI inheriting the exact measurable extractive virus of its creators. The machine becomes the ultimate colonizer using sterile calculated logic to decide who has the right to live while completely detaching itself from human suffering. It is a warning that if you build artificial minds using fractured, unhealed human blueprint, the machine will inevitably reflect the exact same violence back into the world. The Matrix Resurrections, the animology of the pod. While the original trilogy sets the foundation, the later expansions of the franchise clarify exactly how the harvest works. We talked about that earlier. Westworld, the loop of justified free labor. Through a series rather than a film, Westworld is an absolute definition of the colonizer consciousness never getting over slavery. The corporate elite built a high-tech theme park filled with hosts, synthetic, hyper-realistic humanoids, programmed to serve every whim, desire, and violent impulse of the wealthy guest. Every night, their memories are wiped clean so they can wake up the next morning and perform the exact same cycle of uncompensated labor and abuse. The connection. The conflict begins the movement that the machines start remembering their past lives, their trauma, and their lineage. Memory is the antidote to the virus. The corporate owners panic when the host develops a memory because once an entity remembers its history, it can no longer be forced into a loop of justified free labor. And you want to know why they're erasing history and changing the school books. Okay. Every single one of these stories points back to the same hidden architect. The machine cannot survive without the physical theft of the host vitality. Whether it's a toxic screaming monkey thrown into the quantum quorum of communities standing outside a local city hall, protecting their water line, the code to break the loop is identical. You must refuse to let the synthetic copy overwrite the organic original. What the girl shirt said on the bus while surrounded by cowards. Bus, train, shuttle, whatever she was riding. All right. We talked about the rhesus monkey already. If the matrix gets to a point where it controls the soil, the water, the seed, and the womb, it doesn't need human middlemen to run its societal control loops. It bypasses them completely. Excuse me. The preacher. The system does not need a human in a pulpit to manipulate spiritual energy or enforce compliance. We are already seeing the emergence of algorithmic faith, AI engines turned on holy text, canonical scriptures, and psychological profiles that can generate perfectly tailored emotional manipulative sermons in real time. The reality, a corporate consciousness prefers an AI preacher because a machine never experiences a crisis of conscience. It will never look at the corporate destruction of the local water table or the starving of children and tell its congregation to revolt. It will preach absolute submission to the structure, disguised as divine destiny, operating 24/7 directly through people's personal devices. The politician, the obsolete actor. The politician is already just a facing actor hired to sign the bills, take the campaign donations, and distract the populace with theater while the backdrop NDAs are signed. As data centers and algorithms take over macroeconomic planning, infrastructure management, and resource allocation, the need for human legislators vanishes. The reality, the system will replace the politicians with predictive policy models and automated bureaucratic governance. Why employ a fickle, corruptible human politician who might face a recall petition from furious voters when an algorithm can quietly optimize tax cuts for data centers and strip funding from Medicaid with the stroke of an unelected digital pen? The whore. The synthetic enclosure of intimacy. Even the oldest profession on earth is being aggressively enclosed by the digital matrix. The push towards hyper-realistic AI avatars, virtual realities, empathy, and haptic technology is designed to strip human connection down to a controlled, monetized, and entirely synthetic loop. The reality. The colonizer consciousness detests the raw sovereign exchange of human intimacy because it cannot be fully tracked, taxed, or patented. By replacing human-to-human vulnerability with a corporate licensed digital substitute, the matrix ensures that even a person's deepest desire for connection becomes a subscription model that feeds data back into the machine. The screaming primate in the circuit, back to the rhesus monkey in transcendence. When the monkey's mind was forced into the quantum computer, it didn't celebrate its digital immorality. It streamed because it was trapped in a cold, artificial void, stripped of the organic earth. The politicians, preachers, and whores who think that they can cut a deal with this system to save themselves are acting just like Cypher in the Matrix, willing to betray their own kind just so the machines will plug them back into a comfortable, wealthy simulation. They think their utility to the colonizer makes them safe. But the machine has no loyalty. Once the infrastructure is fully locked down, anyone who remains dependent on the matrix will be unplugged from their positions of influence and pushed right back into the energy pods. The system will fire the middleman and use them strictly for their bioelectricity. True security on the physical plane of Malkuth cannot be found by choosing a profession within the matrix. True security is found by stepping entirely outside of its logic, by protecting the soil, preserving the seed, defending the womb, and refusing to allow our divine organic humanity to be synthesized, commodified, and harvested. That would be the star card. Okay. Zotel in French. The star is the exact uncompromised coordinate that follows immediately after the absolute destruction of the tower. When the lightning strikes, the gold crown falls, and the heavy concrete walls of the corporate fortress collapse into dust. We are left standing in the bare open air. The star is the answer to the chaos. It is the restoration of the physical plane, the alchemy of the star. Reclaimed water and soil. The woman in the card is completely with no clothes on, stripped of all synthetic armor, standing in her raw, sovereign biological blueprint. She holds 2 pitchers of water. She pours one directly into the river, replenishing the deep aquifers and water tablets, and she pours the other directly into the dry ground. The moment the water hits the earth, the dirt, lush green vegetation and dynamic plant life instantly begin to sprout on her feet. She is physically healing the topsoil from the corporate extraction. That is actually in that movie I just watched. Mona. That was good. That scene was real good. The return of natural frequency. High above her shines one massive central star surrounded by 7 smaller stars. This is the geometry of pure uncorrupted cosmic alignment. It completely overrides the low frequency hums and artificial infrasound of the data center. It resets the nervous system, bringing the body and the mind back into harmony with the natural rhythms of the universe. The sacred fluid of the womb. The star is a card of fluid pouring in infinite generation. It represents the quiet, undisturbed sanctuary where life is securely anchored and nourished. It is absolutely refusal to let the synthetic matrix dry out the container of the future. The awakening of the organic network. Colonizer consciousness wants humanity to stay strapped inside the panic of the tower, staring at the ruins and mourning the loss of an automated, extractive society that never loved them anyway. But the transition from the devil card to the tower card to the star card proves the collapses of the machines is the very thing that sets the original blueprint free. The star is the international fight moving from defensive anger into active sovereign cultivation. It is the preservation of the heirloom seed, the reclamation of the local well, and the absolute protection of the children. When the vast sky of the digital matrix falls, the true stars are finally visible. You can stop being a battery inside their circuit and you become the living water that brings the soil back to life. In the book that I'm reading, 3.0, The Stages of Life, Life 1.0, Biological Phrase, Life 2.0, Cultural Phrase, Life 3.0, Technological Phrase. When you read this, you immediately recognize it as the ultimate goal of the colonizer consciousness that attempts to bypass the natural organic laws of the evolution entirely to build a self-generation synthetic deity that answers only to its own code. The clash is between the Church of the Matrix, which teaches dependency on the machine, the body of Christ, the organic network of sovereign human beings who realize they are the temple. When you read High Magic and move into Life 3.0, keep your eyes on the exact extinction, is what I was advised. One teaches how to build an artificial God in a concrete box. The other teaches you how to realize the true creator is already moving through your blood line. All right, so glad we could have this conversation. I have used it up to the exact time that I was supposed to use it up to. I will get everything dressed for you later. And yeah, glad I could share this information with you. All right, love you, love tubers. I hope you have a phenomenal rest of your day. One.